Hey guys, this is Chris from DSX Machina, and what we are looking at is a board game on tabletop simulator. Now, people know me. I've been doing stuff on some board games. I did stuff for the Dice Tower, which I'm no longer a part of. And this, what we're looking here, is a Robotech Reconstruction. Now, obviously, I'm not playing the game now because you can see the mouse moving, my hands are moving, doing this. Because what we're seeing is a video of my playthrough of the game with the creators from Strange Machine Games. These guys make the majority of the good board games, which is probably the reason why they talk to me. I, of course, gave the reviews pretty high marks, and I think Attack on the SDF-1 was one of my all-time favorite cooperative board games ever. I still mean that. So obviously, the video which I am most proud of on this channel is my retrospective on Robotech, which was admittedly supposed to be part of the Dice Tower, but I left the channel before that video could get posted, so it's on this channel. That's why I'm always pushing people to kind of look at it, because I'm very, very proud of it. But of course, it was a complete series, but the Robotech franchise just keeps going. And these guys have a new game, Robotech Reconstruction. Now, what is this title? Like I said, this video here is about 2 hours long. We're not going to show you the whole video, obviously, so I may skip to certain sections of it. Right now we're doing a little playthrough, but I just want to talk about what we're getting. This game is going to get pre-orders in June for a release sometime probably in September. It is very different. I think this is a very mature game, and it's strange to say this because when you look at the two dice games, Cyclone Run and Ace Pilot, I remember the names. They were good games, but they're really simplistic games. They didn't have much to them. And I kept Cyclone Run because it's the better of the two games, and I kind of got rid of the other one. And then the other two games, Force of Arms and Crisis Point, I got rid of both of those because they were not particularly good games. I still have Attack on the SDF-1, and my SDF-1 is still built. You can't really see it. It's just off camera there. And I will say that I'm a big fan of what they do. I mean, the graphic design isn't great. I'd say, it could use some improvement, but I like their art assets, and I like the fact that we're getting Robotech games. I think it's really good, and I want to support them in everything they do. And hopefully, I'll be able to get a copy of this, and maybe they'll give me a deal on one. So what is Robotech Reconstruction? Now, I can't really go into a full review, as I want to play the game once and would want to play the game in person before giving an actual review. So this is kind of a first impressions video. Somebody else in the video compared it a lot to the Coin series of games by a company called GMT. They just said Coin. I had to look that up. Coin games, there's actually a few titles that fall into this genre. They're generally games that are dealing with player conflict, but this is me being very artistic. You'll have to excuse me and my funky little camera work. I have ADHD, so I'm constantly moving the camera. Okay, so anyway, it is a game series where players interact with each other, and that interaction directly feeds into how they play. The sides of each game, the player sides, are asymmetric, so they're very different. And then they interact with the board and each other in a very unique fashion. This is basically what Coin has established. Now, I don't know a lot about Coin games. Some people may, but if you don't know the Coin games, one game you will know is a game called Root. Root is a very popular game that came out a couple years ago. It's the same idea. Asymmetric player ability, so much so that every side plays differently. And I don't mean the fact that this guy is a +1 and this guy is a +2, like asymmetric player powers. No, though. This is asymmetric gaming, where one player has control of the entire map, one guy is trying to take that map, and one guy is playing one little figure that moves around. They have completely unique ways of scoring points, unique ways of winning the game, and so forth. That is very much in play here, with one distinct difference. In Root, how you establish points and how you played the game was unique and self-enclosed, which means if you're playing as the birds, you didn't need the cat player in the game in order to play it. when you play Root and you're playing with 2 players, it does give you a suggestion, like if you're playing with 2 players, play with these sides, because these 2 wouldn't really do very well together, and they're right. And if you play with 3, it says, yeah, these are your suggestions. And then at 4, you can do however you want. And there's 2 or 3 other sides as well, and you can interchange them. But the point is the game is playable at 2 players. This game, which would probably be similar to the Coin series, this is not the case. Which means you need all 4 factions playing the game for it to function. One good example is I have these units right here. I was playing the Anti-Unification League, which means I control these guys. And I control by basically trying to take these cities. The RDF player is trying to play these tokens, and then the REF player is similar. The idea, of course, is these 2 guys are somewhat aligned, but only one can win. These 2 are somewhat aligned, but only one can win. But they directly feed off of each other, which means the only way for this player to work correctly is to have the other 2 playing. Now, with this anti-unification, he doesn't do much when it comes to requiring other players. But some of these guys actually do. They do require other players interacting with them for them to function. That's something that Root doesn't do. And I will admit, it's a unique thing, but it does create this flaw that you have to play with all 4 factions. Now, the game thankfully does give you the option. This REF looks a little different than the other ones because this is a robot. This is an automatic functioning AI with cards that tells you what it does. So if you're playing with 3 characters, then you play with this automated one, and then you play against each other, and then hopefully this guy won't win. And that's fine. And so everyone's playing with this game in a different way. There's area control. So oddly enough, in area control, there's only 2 sides. Either you're controlling these 2 sides, or you're controlling these 2 sides. But then these guys could get points in different fashion. And then we also spend horticulture, which is right over here. And then here, on this left-hand side here, these are the win conditions. So we can see these 2 guys operate very similar. They both want to capture territory. But the other 2 are a little different. They have different win conditions in their own. For example, the Zentradi wants to take these tokens down. And if he manages to, so he wants to move these tokens to the right, and once they move to this space right here, he claims them. If he claims all of them on the board, he wins the game. Simple as that. I'm a little different. I want to control these city territories here, 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 and I can increase the number of cities by placing down city tiles, which I can do here. I was close to winning, actually. I think there was a chance I was going to win on 4th round. Then in the last round, the RDF player, which was played by the game designer, won. Hey, there's a surprise. Didn't see that one coming. As somebody that sold games for a living, I literally was a salesman selling 40K games. One of the things I learned is when you're playing a board game to somebody you're trying to sell the game to, you make sure that they win. So I appreciate the fact that he didn't try to throw the game for us. And then this is the game trap. So everyone has a very unique play style. And then every time there's an end of a round, you go through this massive step, like literally it's like 10 steps to finish a turn. The game itself is pretty unique and interesting. Basically, everyone has 5 cards in their hand. Whoever's determined to be the first player plays down a card. Now, he plays down a card that represents his faction. He does the white box action, and then he gets to perform a normal action on his board. If you play someone else's faction, that faction gets to do both of those actions, both the black and the white, on their turn, but then you get to play a normal and a special action, which is very interesting. This means that throughout a 4-player game, you could very well go a couple of additional times if someone else plays it. Now, once again, I don't know if this is 100% balanced. RDF won, so we don't know how it would have played out. I do know that the robot almost won this game, but after everyone has played their cards, so all the players have activated, Then you go through this 10-step procedure where you get to do additional actions and go on from there. And then there are 4 rounds, and the 4 rounds represent the timeline. For those people who know Robotech, Robotech is based off of Macross. Macross is 30-some episodes, but it's basically split into 30-plus episodes, but it's split into 2 halves. It's everything leading up to Force of Arms, which is this climactic, cataclysmic battle where Earth gets destroyed, and then the Zentradi who destroyed it get destroyed themselves. And it seems to leave its events resolved. But it was so popular, they continued on it for another season, for a bunch of episodes, which talks about the reconstruction and the rehabilitation of the planet and the people on it, including a bunch of defected Zentradi from the first story, from the first half of the game, of the series. It's still good. I enjoy what they did. There were a couple flaws with it. One is that instead of the resolved romance staying resolved, they retraced it and started double downing on the love triangle again, and that triangle was, in my opinion, resolved at Force of Arms. You didn't need to go back in time and restart it. You could have just had them together, and I've always had an issue with that. But that's beside the point. Point is that these 4 events here, these deal with specific episodes in that second season. So I think this is a really neat idea. I think this is a really cool thing that they've done. It's also very specific, so I appreciate that them being ballsy and creating a game that's based off a very specific moment in the series that you really have to kind of know what's going on. The fact that, why are there aliens living on the Earth? Why is anti-unification? Why is the world rebuilding? Unless you know the series, you don't know why this is happening. So there's four rounds. So 4 rounds, as he explains, good timing. 4 rounds, so 4 attempts to go through this. So you may only have 4 actions in the entire game, but that's not true. Chances are someone's going to play a card that allows you to do something, and there are a few moments here where you get to do stuff as well. Like in here, anti-unification gets to take additional actions here. These 2 sides get to do additional actions here, and there are a few other additional things you can do as well. So it's not 4 action. I would say you probably have 8 or 9 turns. So one criticism you can say that there isn't much game there. The game doesn't go on for very long. It gets resolved pretty quickly. As it is, the game ended with one victory condition getting established at the end of round 4. I can't remember when we actually finished the game, because at the end of the round, the Zentradi player, he wins automatically when he pulls all these tokens off. Everybody else doesn't. They have to wait till the end of the day, end of the round, for their win condition to activate. So there's obviously a lot of player interaction, because obviously, you have to push down players that are winning in order for you to win. And although these people are allied, in the end, only one person will actually win. So although there is some teamwork here, there isn't that much teamwork. You can be limited. Like as we get later into the game, we'll see that I'll eventually get all cards that support my faction. So it's a very interesting thing that you might be forced to play a card that supports your side, or you might have cards that have nobody at all, and you may be forced to play a card that doesn't support your side. But I've noticed that these cards that have other rules in place, although giving a quote-unquote benefit, may not give a benefit that actually benefits. Like one card I play, for example, even though it's an RDF card, actually messes him up. He is able to do a function, but it costs him a lot of protoculture. So there are cards that seem beneficial, but at that specific moment in the game is actually a detriment. So there's actually some clever points in there. They made a point of saying that there's actually not a lot of cards in this deck, so in a standard play you may end up seeing the vast majority of the cards come into play. So it's a very unique situation. I think I want to play this game in person with friends and to see how this thing plays out. Would I own it if I saw it on the shelf, if it was not Robotech? And would I keep it? And the answer probably is no. And the reason has nothing to do with the quality of the game or the quality of the designers or the rules even. I think the game is fun in its own. There's 2 issues I have with the game. The first and the very obvious one is that it's 3 to 4 players, and we're in quarantine. Even if this game comes out in June or July, my game group is generally not that big. The vast majority of the games I play are with my wife, and that's 2 people. And we've kind of realized that games that are 3-up players, there better be a game that a group wants to play, like a campaign game, or it's a game that we love too much to get rid of it. But the vast majority of the time, we've been getting rid of our 3-up games. And that's an important thing. If we can't play it with my wife and me together, there's no point in keeping it. So the fact that this game is 3 to 4 players has a big knock against it. Now you're probably saying, wait a second, you just said there's a robot player. Why isn't there a robot player for everyone else? And that's the only sticking point I have. There is an AI that's only for one character, the REF side, and only one, which means if you play with 3 players, nobody can play the REF. You can only play the other 3 factions. And only when you have 4 players can that other player pick the REF. Now, if there was an android for all of the players, that would be your solution. Then you have 3 players, the robots, you can choose what the robot plays, and you could potentially play with 2 or even 1 character, 1 player. And this becomes a 1 to 4 game. I would immediately keep this game at that point because that would be fun. You could even feasibly create rules to say, okay, we'll do the bots for 1 to 2 or 3 players, but you can't go against side, which means you can't have a robot playing anti-unification in Zentradi. You have to have a robot on your side if you're playing with 2 players. Or not. Maybe you want to do a cooperative game and have the AI control the RDF and REF, and then the anti-unification league in the Zentradi are players playing one side. Maybe you can even create a cooperative variant as a result. These are a lot of ideas that are unfortunate that they're not implementing. And I've talked to the designer, and it's unfortunate that they know that this is something that they should work on, and their solution is to probably release these as an expansion. Now, expansions are very much celebrated in board games, but in video games, expansions are called DLC, and they're becoming increasingly vilified, especially if it feels like it's an element of the game that they took out to sell you later. Now, board games do this. Let's not deny. The board games do this. Look at Scythe. Scythe has a board of 6 factions, but only gives you 4, and you got to pay for the other 2. So they do this. That being said, as long as you make your game playable for 4, like if you had a 3-player game and you had to pay for the 4th player, there'd be hell to play. No one would forgive you for that, because you should always run your competitive game to 4 players, unless it's a party game that runs over 4. There's a difference. Like if this expansion said, here's an expansion with new factions that interact with other characters, allow you to play the game to 5 players. That's an expansion. I disagree with the idea of an expansion that allows you to play at lower player counts. I've never seen a game that had an expansion for their game that offered the solo mode. I think the solo mode and being able to play at lower player counts should be a basic aspect of the core game. Expansion should be ways to expand the game, not allow you to play it with lower players. I've never seen a game have an expansion that allowed you to play it with fewer players. They created automata mode like Scythe does, and so you can play it by yourself, and you can play it with 2 people, and you can play it up to 4 or 5 players, and then their expansions allow you to play it for 5 or 6 players, and then they've offered it since then. Root, same thing. You can play Root with 2, you can play Root with 3, play Root 4, and then they have a 5 and 6 player expansion. I've never seen someone that says, this is a 3 or 4 player game, buy our expansion so you can play it by yourself or with 2. I really don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to have to pay more so that my wife and I can play this game together. I mean that sincerely, and I don't want to be really critical. It was very nice of Strange Machine to invite me to play this game. But ultimately, that's my biggest sticking point and why I would probably not buy this game in its current form because it can't be played with me and Nicole, and then they may put out an expansion. Strange Machine has never put out a Robotech expansion. That's something else to be considered, because what if this game doesn't sell? Suddenly, I may buy a game that I can never play with my wife because it's only for 3 to 4 players. They've never done an expansion for Cyclone. They've never done an expansion for Attack on the SDF-1. This will be the first time that they ever put out an expansion. So, I know it's probably too late in the day, but I seriously think that they should consider that as an option. They should put out the game with bots for all 4 players, so you can run it single solitaire. You can run it. Trust me, I'm not preaching to the choir here, folks. This seems to be pretty basic stuff. Why would you not put the game out for, solo modes are so incredibly popular right now. Having a game playable for 2 players is critical in this market. I don't think these games are huge sellers, right? Why cripple its sales already by limiting it to 3 to 4 players? That's a very unique situation. Most games that are 3 up are usually 3 to 6, 3 to 7. They're designed for large groups. This 3 or 4 is kind of like what's killing Gen 7. Because Gen 7 is like, 3 to 4 players. I'm like, and no one buys them because it's like, that's a very unique situation. There's 2 scenarios. If you have 3 or if you have 4. It's not 2, 3, or 4 or solitaire. So that's going to really hurt this game. I cannot stress this enough, not having this game playable for 2 or 1 player. I know it's going to probably, because obviously you have to have cards, you have to have the alternate card, the card here. But if that means spending an extra $10 to have this game playable for 1 to 2 players, I'd do it. I'd pay it. I wouldn't pay an extra $25 for an expansion for that, personally. I don't think that's the right thing to do. So, the game is fun. I like the board. It's nice and wide, and these tokens are nice, and there's standees for the characters. I love the fact that the Anti-Unification League is led by Lin Minmay. So I'm playing Lin Minmay. I'm literally moving Lin Minmay's board across. The limited turns also means there wasn't a lot. I said I only did maybe 8 or 9 actions for the entire game. And oddly enough, I came close to winning. But yeah, this is definitely a quick game. This is a game, once you know how to play it, it's done in 40 minutes. There's not a lot of game. But that's fine. Not every game needs to run 3 or 4 hours. Any other criticisms? I would say the only other criticism I might have is because of the limited cards, because these games all start basically the same way, after you play this game once, where's your longevity? Like, if you play with the same players again, how do you create new strategies? How do you play the game again, right? It's one of those things, like so many games right now want to create randomization in the board, so every time you play it's a bit different. But if these cards are limited specifically, and if these boards are pre-configured for 3 to 4 players, you could start the game and it would be exactly the same. The only variety being this handout of cards, but because the deck is small, you'll see almost every card in a single play. There won't be anything new or interesting. There's also some other design elements. For example, I'll comment on this. I commented in the video that the RDF has the RDF logo. The Anti-Unification League has the same logo with a line through it. The line through it is red. The symbol is red. Now we see this symbol right here. This token has a yellow background, and this one has not a yellow background. So it's easier to distinguish these two here. But on this Protoculture board, look how similar these 2 tokens are. In fact, at one point in the game, I screwed up and accidentally moved this one. We were supposed to move this one because they look so much alike. In fact, I just did it. In fact, I literally did it right now. I literally made the mistake, and it stalled the game for 10 minutes as we were trying to figure out where he was. And yeah, so that was that issue. And I'm glad this game doesn't have any minis. This is probably a very inexpensive game. In its current form, it should be about $40 to $50 Canadian, which means $30 to $40 US, because there's not a lot in this game. If it's like $70, there's a problem with the game. I don't know what its retail price would be, but like I said, I would spend $10 extra to have it operable for 1 or 2 players. So that is my first impressions of Robotech Reconstruction, this root/coin themed style game, using the Robotech franchise in this asymmetric area control game. I think it has a lot of promise, but I think that there's a couple graphic elements, and I think that they should consider, for the core box, offering the game to be playable for 1 to 2 players. I can't stress that enough. I really think it's an important idea. So anyway, guys, this has been Chris from Deus Ex Machina talking a preview of Robotech Reconstruction. Have yourself a pleasant evening.